Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Howdy,
Tell,
Steve.
How's it going, Steve?
tell. Great
Tell.
name, by the way. I'm going to ask you about that. I was starting to talk before we recorded. I was going to say I wanted to talk to David and have him on the show for a while because I almost feel like I'm flipping the script a little bit here because he helped me when he was at the Globe, with several bands, but and I appreciate that. And now
No
now
problem.
here we are on the other end of the spectrum, Dave.
That's right. Very much so.
And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
were
no, I appreciate the interest. Thank
and
you.
you were a great writer too, man. For people out there listening, David Wildman, longtime writer, wrote for the Boston Globe, did stories on some bands that I worked with when I moved to Boston in the late. I guess it would probably be the early 2000s because I moved here at the end of the 90s. But it's great to have you guys here. I saw you guys about a year, I think it was exactly 1 year ago in Lowell. Played with Mini Beast at the town and the
Found the
city.
City Festival, yeah.
Yeah, you guys were great,
Thank
and
you.
I believe we talked for a minute or two. I
Yeah.
was talking
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah,
That's why I introduced myself. You had a
yeah,
government issue T-shirt on. I'm like, dude, GM.
proudly.
Yeah.
I proudly wear my government issue U shirt. Um,
And but we got to talking, and of course, then I realized who you were, and had known of you for so many years, and it was just very surprising that I'd never met you personally, or that our paths had not crossed personally.
They probably did. They
Seems pretty likely,
they
one
probably
way or the
did.
other.
Um, I wanted to get a little background on you guys, and about, before Tell. If David, you can start, man. Like, I don't think you're from Boston because I read somewhere that you moved to Boston to,
Well, I was from I grew up in Western Mass, so South Hadley.
oh, South Hadley, not too far from Northampton, right?
Correct.
So what was it like growing up out there?
Happy Valley is, suburbia.
Did you listen to a lot of music when you were a teenager out there?
Yeah. There was a lot of good radio there. The UMass radio station.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually on that station when I ended up going to UMass. Um, I did some radio programs on that station, and there was a lot happening back then. That was a while ago. Those were the days of Dinosaur Jr. and the Pixies and all these other bands came out of that area. Um, and I was in a band called Casper Hauser that was that did pretty well for a while. And then I formed a band called Rapture of the Deep. Eventually moved to Boston and kept that band going with different personnel.
The
And
Unfamiliars is when I became familiar with your musicianship. But before
yeah,
we talk about all these bands, because I had a list here of bands you played in, when you were a
we both
teenager,
have.
did you get into the indie rock right away? Because you mentioned Dinosaur Jr. in those bands, or did you listen to classic rock before you got into that type of music?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, I was listening to the radio mostly. I remember, loving Born to Run, songs like that.
Steppenwolf.
No, no.
Springsteen. Sorry, I was thinking of
Springsteen, yeah,
I don't know what.
yeah.
Born to Be
I mean,
Wild.
I love I well, that was earlier, yeah. And that was
Also a great song.
yeah, no, yeah, great song as well, yeah.
I had the wrong Born. Um, so Springsteen was an early favorite of yours.
Yeah, Springsteen, and just, anything that was cool that was on the radio. Uh I got into Bowie after I left high school, got into college. I was at Hampshire College, which I don't know if you're familiar with Hampshire
Very
College.
exclusive little college out there in Western.
Yeah, I saved up the money for it. My parents paid for half, and it was a crazy, crazy scene.
Were you a journalism major there?
Well, the thing is, at Hampshire College, they don't have majors. There's only one thing required. It's you're supposed to pass all your Div 1 exams and the five different areas of study, and then you're supposed to focus it all down uh to your Div 3 by the time you get there. Your Div 2 is supposed to be you're still working, more generally. Then you're supposed to spend like 2 years working on your Div 3, and that was the big deal. And it was a joke. Like people would just, do a treatise on Do Rocks Think or something. There was one dude who went on to be a pretty well-known writer whose name has escaped me. But his whole Div 3 consisted of him doing a video or a movie actually, and saying, I have everybody here to make my Div 3 movie, and nobody showed up. So this is it. I guess I flunked. And he didn't flunk. So it was impossible to flunk out of Hampshire College. Um,
There weren't
so
a
that
lot of students there, were there?
it's kind of a small school.
Yeah, like Amherst and Williams, and there's a lot of cool little co exclusive colleges out there in
Yeah,
Western Mass. I probably would have ended up at Westfield State, but I went to Framingham State.
that's cool. Some cool people went to Westfield today.
Did they have a college radio station there too, or because you mentioned UMass's station?
Yeah, they didn't have one at least when I was there. Um, they had a co-ed sauna.
A co-ed sauna.
Yeah, yeah. They had all these everyone had a pet, and the thing was you had to have a pet that had something wrong with it, like a dog with three legs or a cat with one eye. And all these pets would just be let loose around, around the school. It was a small school, and they would run in packs. And so you'd see like a cloud of animals coming at you, and it's like, get out of the way. And they were all named after members of the Grateful Dead. Pigpen, leave him alone. Garcia, stop that.
Now, was that subculture a big part of the college culture there?
Yeah, it
The whole
was.
Grateful Dead
I
subculture.
think the whole point at when I was there was rich deadhead parents would send their kids there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a model, and I went to school at New Hampshire and saw certainly some of that subculture as well. They
yeah,
could follow the Dead around all summer.
yeah.
I had like a job, bussing tables back home on the Cape. I couldn't follow it. Would have
You
been
went
fun.
you went to school at the University of New Hampshire?
No, actually, I went to Dartmouth College up in Hanover, New Hampshire.
Wow, you
But at the
guys.
time I was a student there, the Grateful Dead subculture was a very heavy presence. And it took me a while to catch on because I actually really didn't catch on because I was at the time very much into the punk and new wave music. And I got to college and it was just everywhere. It was as if they issued a copy of Europe 72 when you crossed the state line into New Hampshire, paid a toll, and were given an 8 track of Europe 72 and didn't really catch on. Now I have to say that I'm a huge fan of the Dead. Absolutely love their music. Just took me a long time to figure out how they were communicating. It was coming from a very different place than the
You,
music I was listening to.
you know,
Yeah, and out in Western Mass, it was like Jiggle the Handle. There are all
Yeah,
these
right, exactly.
you know,
Yeah, they could
David.
be a jam band. A
yeah, all
jam
these
band
jam
scene.
bands.
I
Uh,
think David can appreciate what I'm going to say. Last night, I don't know why, but I went on this deep dive into the Ballad of the Thin Man, the song by Bob Dylan, and I watched all
mm,
these different versions, and the Dead actually had a version of it that was fantastic. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like blown
yeah,
away by how good it was, because to me, that song is really overlooked as one of the greatest songs
yeah,
ever.
that's a great one. I mean, he toured with the Dead for a while. He did a whole. He made himself a Deadhead for a while.
That band and the Dead
Yeah,
record is very valuable if you have it. Not a lot of people
I
have
don't.
it.
Mm.
It's a very valuable record. Well, we're going to go back to you for a second, Dave. So Jim, did you grow up in Western Mass too?
No, actually, I grew up down the Cape.
Cape, how did you
small town called Harwich. Uh,
Dartmouth is a good school. How'd you end up there? You're a
yeah,
smart
well,
kid,
I
huh?
mean, I was fortunate to have an opportunity to go there. Interesting sort of culture shock when I got there. Was a bit of a square peg in a round hole. Eventually found my people, fun, artistic folks, very diverse crowd, essentially the misfits of the community, you might say, because the culture, the sort of rah-rah culture you might associate with a place like that was still a really strong element. And I wanted kind of no part of that. But eventually I found my tribe and good folks, musicians mostly, artists, theater folks.
We've had a couple people here on the show that are from the Cape. Cliff from the Freeze being the most
Oh, of
famous
course.
of them.
But I went to high school with Chris Pearson from Green Magnet School.
Chris
Yeah,
Pearson,
he grew up
yeah.
in my same town of Harwich. He was in the same class as my brother. So yeah, there's been a few. Yeah, there was a weird. I mean, it
Chris
was a
is
sort of a
moving.
bizarre place back then. It's much more of a year-round community now.
Yeah,
Back
Chris is
then,
moving to Ireland. I don't
is
blame
that right?
him.
I thought I saw something about that. Good for him. I can understand why someone would want to move to Ireland right now.
Well, he has a connection. I guess his wife is half an Irish citizen, but it's a good time
Nice.
to get the hell out of here.
That's what I
Yeah,
mean. If I had the opportunity, I'd seriously consider it.
yeah.
Yeah,
What were
but
you
yeah.
listening to? What kind of music were you
Well,
listening
it's
to?
funny, we mentioned radio, and when I caught on to the Cape Cod Community College station, WKKL, um, and it's so awesome that, Kristen X show, Bumblebee Radio, still broadcasts on
Yeah.
that. I think the Sethy Spice's Elastic Lamb. But all of a sudden, I was hearing, The Clash, stuff I wasn't hearing on, we all listened to BCN at the time. But man, all of a sudden, I could hear Gang of Four and Talking Heads and Dead Kennedys and all that. So I immediately gravitated to all that stuff. Although I didn't entirely lose my appreciation for things like Jay Giles Band or the arena type stuff because I used to spend a lot of summer weekends at the Cape Cod Coliseum. So I got to see many of those bands and enjoyed it tremendously. But once I started hearing some of the more unusual, unconventional music, it was from by listening to KKL. So I owe them a great debt.
Because you mentioned the Cape Cod Call, I do this often, by the way. Someone can throw something out there and I'll have to like throw something back at you. I saw the Outlaws, but I went to the open to see the opening band, Thin Lizzy, open for the Outlaws at the
Mm,
Cape Cod Coliseum, 1978. And
jeez.
I remember that very well because my friend got these purple microdots, right?
Oh,
And
sure.
he got four of them, right? And we each did one. It was stupid 17-year-old kids, you know. We did one and we're like, some time went by. I'm like, I don't feel anything. You no, let's do another one. And I remember during green grass and high tides, it kicked in, and the song seemed like it must have lasted. It was a long song, by the way, but it seemed like it must have lasted a lifetime because I was tripping my brains out. The Cape Cod
Yeah.
Coliseum.
Oh, yeah. And I actually saw the Outlaws. This would have been the following summer they came back, but they came back with the Charlie Daniels Band. And boy, I wish I could have seen Thin Lizzy.
I got
But
to
I
see
will
Thin
say,
Lizzy twice. I saw them open for Queen too.
oh
Oh,
man,
wow.
those would have been the shows I would have loved to see. But the parking lot parties at the Cape Cod Coliseum, which I'm literally wearing a Cape Cod Coliseum t-shirt, you can't see it right now. But they were legendary. I
Yeah,
mean,
I was.
you could show up at noon, not even go to the show, just hang out and
I went to
oh,
that other
things going on.
venue last summer with the rotating stage, and
Oh, the Cape Cod Melody
yeah,
Tent, I believe.
Dave Amato, who grew up in Framingham, he's been in REO Speedwagon for like 30 years. We're friends, and I went to see REO at Charlie Farron opened. And REO,
Yeah.
I didn't think I would like it, but I ended up liking it a lot. It was really good, man. They put on a great show. I realized I knew every single
I was
song.
going to say they wrote some great songs, and you certainly heard them enough.
Now, you guys are both guitar players. Dave, when did you actually start playing? And was it guitar first?
No, it's piano first.
Piano. I see a
Yeah.
piano behind you.
Yeah, I got a
Um,
couple of them.
So did you like I always just knew you as a writer until the Unfamiliars.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what year that was. What year was the Unfamiliars?
That would have been like 2004, something like that,
Yeah, I
maybe
got to know you around that
2003.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you at the Globe during that time too?
Well, that was after I was at the Globe. I started at I started the Globe actually in like 1990. So I spent 10 years at the Globe doing
Wow.
doing my On the Rise column, and I think that's when I wrote about like Cage Heat and some of those other bands. Um, yeah, that was like a 10-year period where I had three columns every week. I wasn't on the staff, but I was required to get my columns in, so I might as well have been on the staff. And I interviewed every band in town
You did.
at that point.
I really miss the whole vibe of newspapers and everything. I
Yeah.
really miss it.
Well, we started at the Globe. They started the City Weekly series, and the whole point of the City Weekly series was to take on the Phoenix, because the Phoenix had, the they basically had the scene. If you wanted to know what was going on, you had to read the Phoenix. You had
Yeah.
to go to the Phoenix Club listings, you know.
Wow. I missed
Yeah.
that.
And if you wanted to find out what was going on, before the paper came out, which is what I had to do for, the club listings part of the City Weekly, you had to call up all the clubs and find out what was going on. That was the only way. Long before the internet.
I loved it. I really did. I loved it. And
Yeah,
I
it was
don't
a
mean
good, it
this.
was a good, it was a good scene.
I mean, I
Really
know a lot of
was.
people say, I liked it better back then, but I really did. I mean, I think these cell phones are like just, oh, they're ruining everything. It's like you
Yeah,
spend so much time looking on your phone. I used to love flipping through those papers, all
yeah,
of them. When I moved here in the late 90s, the Herald, the Globe, and the Phoenix were all going strong. They all had good music writers, and you could really read. And that's how I get to know guys like you, David. Now, you said you played piano. Did you play piano in any of the bands like Casper Hauser? I have a list here of bands. I don't know. You were in a band Thinner. Is that the same Thinner from Worcester? Or is that a
no,
different Thinner?
no, that was here,
And
Boston.
Savage Garden.
Savage Garden. That one I played acoustic guitar and ran it through a distortion unit. Um, that was a yeah, that was an interesting band. That was a trio. We had these rabid fans, like five of them. And that was it. And they took on. We had one song called our theme song, Savage Garden. We're living in the Savage, and it was all vampire stuff. And they just really took to the vampire ethic. So they would show up at our gigs dressed like vampires and stuff, and
Wow.
they,
Where were you
they're really
playing?
really into it. We'd be playing at like the Blue Wall, in at places like that. Places in um what do you call it? In Northampton, there were a few places like
So that was before you got here, Western Mass.
um that was no, that was when I was going to Hampshire College. No, that was right after Hampshire College. So that was when I started at UMass, and I got into that band. And yeah, that was it was a pretty interesting uh situation, doing we did some what do you call them, shows for labels, um
Showcases.
showcases, thank you. I remember we did one at CBGB's, um back when, CBGBs was still, hopping. And that was pretty interesting. We didn't get picked up, but the band, uh, like 6 months later, the band Savage Garden from Australia came out on the same label that we had that we had done a showcase for.
They signed the wrong Savage Garden.
No, those guys made a lot of money, but they got the name from the same place we did, which was from an Anne Rice novel. So it was nothing incredibly original.
Jim, were you in a lot of bands when you were younger?
Well, I have, the incredible distinction of having played around here for quite a few years and really accomplished basically nothing. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, I've been in a lot of bands over the years. I think very few names would potentially ring much of a bell.
Any recording?
I did put out a CD with a band called Vision Thing back in the 90s. We were on Cherry Disc records. We're not much beloved around town for a variety of reasons. Really didn't have the sound that was embraced much locally, although we did tend to do better outside of town. And in fact, some years later, I ran into the guy who had run Cherry Disc Records, and it was very nice to hear that actually, in terms of overall sales of CDs, we had done respectably well. But around town, we weren't that well known. You might have heard the name at the time.
I was in California, I think, still till the end of the 90s, but I remember
Oh,
that
okay, yeah.
label. I remember that label because when I got here, one of the bands I worked with was Boy Wonder, and
Oh,
they were
sure,
on
yeah,
that, Paula Kelly, and they
yeah.
were on that label. So when did you two guys meet, now that we've got a little background here?
Well, it's funny. I have to say, I saw Savage Garden like the first week I moved to
Come
town.
on.
Yeah, no, I moved to an apartment on Park Drive in the Fenway, which was a really fascinating neighborhood at the time, particularly for
Yeah.
a kid who'd grown up on the Cape and not used to the ways of the big city. Crazy neighborhood, but they used to have live shows in that area over, not the Rose Garden, but across over on the Fenway, there was a performance area. And I swear you guys covered the theme to Gilligan's Island. Maybe that's an odd memory, but I could swear you guys did that. But I saw Savage Garden. And then another
Yeah,
point of
that
connection,
was early on. Wow, that was
yeah,
that
I
that
mean,
was
really, I had
we
just gotten to town.
that
Um,
was Stairway to Gilligan's Island
oh, so
because
you guys did that bit.
yeah, because
But
it's the
it's
same
funny,
chord progression. So
you mentioned the city section thing because that was my other point of connection with you, David, is that when you were doing that, I was in the band Bound for Venus at the time.
right,
That
right,
might ring a bell with you. We put out a CD,
right.
sort of an odd, again, sort of an odd. We were sort of a neo glam band, which was an odd thing to be in like the year 2000. It was before the Darkness or any of those guys hit. But some people liked what we were doing, and some people liked our CD. And David was kind enough to have us in and interview us, and that's where I first met David myself.
And that was around when?
I'm gonna say 2000. Yeah.
2000. Okay, so I don't really know the history of. I think Stir Crazy might have been the first thing in 2021. Was there a lot before that?
For Tell,
Yeah.
no, that was the first thing that we
Okay.
did. Yeah.
So what year did you guys meet each other and start playing together?
Well, Tell was originally started by me and Jay Raffi, the bass player.
Okay.
Um, we'd played together in the Unfamiliars for a little while, and then we kind of went our separate ways in different bands, stayed in touch, and then I don't know, at some point we just decided, I guess he'd left the band he was in, and I was looking to do something, so we decided to form, a new band. And not long after we formed the band, we the pandemic hit. So we didn't really even get a chance to do that much with it. And that was when we did the album, the Stir Crazy. It was mostly written between, the two of us over Zoom, or not Zoom, but I mean, I would come up with parts on my home studio and send them to him, and he'd come up with bass lines. And then we went into to the studio, um, and got, a really, really, really good drummer, and put the, and a really good sound engineer slash producer, this guy Benny Grotto.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Benny because I know you worked with him a lot. He's one of the best engineers in
Yeah,
Boston, I think.
and he's worked a lot with Chuck, who was the drummer, and just we put this thing together pretty much, in the studio, and through stuff that we sent each other. So it really wasn't like a band record in that sense. It was more like a studio creation. Um, then we started to get out and play and stuff, but we decided that we wanted to really be able to dig in and get some members that, wanted to really form a band, and so that's how I met this gentleman here, and that's how I met Pat Cran, our drummer.
So you were a three-piece when you first went to
Yeah,
Benny?
yeah.
Now, what made you
And
pick
we did have one other guitar player, Ken
what made you go to Benny? I
Ken
mean, I
Rothman.
love Benny's work, but what was there something about certain bands he worked with or whatever that caught your attention that made you want to work with him?
That was Jay, actually, because Jay was playing with Chuck, in another band as well, and he uh, he just thought Chuck would be great, for our music. He wanted to play with him. They were in Devil Love together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Ken Rothman, who was also in that band, came in and played with us a little toward the end too. Um, and he just, he wanted to play with Chuck, so we set it up in the studio. And Chuck is great, but Chuck plays in a lot of bands. He's really, really in demand, and so we never really got a chance to practice that much with him. We'd send him the music, he'd come up with his parts, and they'd be great. We played out a number of times. We did the first Town in the City festival with him playing drums. Um, but then it was just kind of a mutual thing. Like he just couldn't really give it the time, that it needed. So we did a drum search and got Pat Cran, and that's when we did the second the EP, the Life in Reverse EP.
Which I've listened to a lot more. But let me go back for a second here. What was your songwriting process always the same from the beginning? And talk about how that has been evolving for you.
It's always pretty much been the same. That since I've been working with Jay, that I will write a song and make sure that the chords are really strong, and then let him come up with a bass line for it. And sometimes the song changes with the bass line, and we simplify it and make the bass line more prominent because his bass playing is insane. It's just an utterly brilliant bass player, unique. There's nobody else that plays the kind of thing he plays. And he's almost like, almost guitar-like in the way that he's playing melodies underneath. And so it's developed like that, around me and Jay. And then when we brought Jim in, he's really added a whole new dimension to it.
Yeah, you guys are really good. I mean, when I saw your set in Lowell, I was very impressed. But before that, I had heard Owned, the song Owned, and I
Yeah.
knew that, because I've been following you for a while, Dave, your project. I saw Tell one other time, and I was trying to remember where that was, and I couldn't remember because I don't think I saw the whole set, but I can't remember. It was early on. I don't think Jim was there yet. Is it possible I could have seen the
Yeah,
band? Yeah.
yeah, probably Ken was playing. You might
Yeah.
have seen us at the Jungle, maybe, or something like that. I don't
It
know.
does. It doesn't. somewhere.
The
But I
mid
was,
midway, who
yeah, I
knows?
was fully engaged when I saw you guys in Lowell last year, and I really liked it. Um, Talk about that. Now, the Life in Reverse EP, is that only available digitally? Is there any way to get that
Yeah, that's the only way to get it.
digitally? Have you
Yeah,
thought about pressing any of that stuff?
not really. It's just, I mean, it's just extra money, to do that, and we just haven't really wanted to, put the money into that. We put it into other things.
Are you fine with just having digital releases?
I am,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how Jim feels about it, but I feel like we did put out a CD on the Lunch label with Stir Crazy, and we couldn't give the damn things away. I mean, literally couldn't give them away.
I would
We
love a copy. I'll give you my address afterwards
Oh
if you
yeah,
have one.
I'll
Because
I'll send you five of them. We, I mean, we basically, we put all the money into putting that together. We promoted the hell out of it. We did a really expensive video, and just the returns on it we're not great.
nobody wanted any CDs, so don't feel bad. The only thing I
Yeah,
think that's saving physical is vinyl making a comeback because CDs to me were a big waste of time. They were, and I
I've
have
read.
thousands of them. So
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
during the pandemic, one of the things I did was I took a lot of them out of their cases and I saved the sleeves and I put them in those like bookcase type things, not photo album case. And
Yeah.
so now I just have alternative, classic rock, punk rock. I have them all labeled. We had a lot of time during the pandemic to do
Yeah.
shit. I did the same with the DVDs. Um, so once Jim came into the band, I liked the way you guys worked together with the guitar. Did that kind of happen right away, or did you guys kind of work? How did that work for you, Jim, getting in the band as far as your guitar parts go?
Well, I feel fortunate to have to be working with David because I went through a period of the last few years where I spent some time with some bands, and ultimately, after a few months, it was determined to not have worked out well, and I was asked to leave, or it was mutually decided because essentially perhaps my style of playing is a little dated or unconventional. But at the time, it seemed like everybody was looking for some sort of putting together some sort of Americana or roots kind of band or something like that. And I really tried to learn or to teach myself. This was during the early months of the pandemic, how to play that kind of music. And I bought a bunch of like Buck Owens records, and I bought Merle Haggard and stuff. And I even reconnected with my old buddy guitar teacher, Rich Gilbert, who gave me some virtual lessons because no one, he can play country like you. I mean, jaw-droppingly well.
You can
Um,
play anything jaw-droppingly well.
exactly. But I found that, I guess I'm just not passionate about that style of music the way I'm about other stuff. So it didn't work out well, and actually ended up meeting David by auditioning for a different band who determined that I was not a good fit. But fortunately, the people in the band were real nice guys. And the main songwriter, a good friend of David's, when he heard that David was looking for a guitar player, said, we just met this guy who might be a good fit. And David is, very receptive to, I think a really good example is our most recent release, Sweet Proximity, where some of the guitar playing that I'm contributing the song is pretty unconventional. One journalist used the term repellent. Like this guitar player seems to be trying to sound deliberately, which isn't essentially accurate. That was what I was trying to accomplish. So I was trying to emulate certain guitar players I love, the music of if you remember Richard Hell and the Voidoids, had a guy named Robert Quine. And Robert Quine
Yeah.
just played like nobody else. He played intervals and stuff that sound very cranky to the ear, very dissonant. And I love that kind of thing.
Wow,
And Dave,
I feel good about my vibe now because under Sweet Proximity, I wrote, at times I get a television vibe. So it's kind of the
oh,
same
Yeah.
era. I don't know if anyone ever compares you
Oh,
guys to Verlaine and
we
that.
love to hear that. David, if
Yeah.
I may speak for us to say that's a comparison that makes me feel extremely good. We have such respect for that guitar team and how they took the concept of a two guitar band to places really that had been uncharted
That's what I
previously.
got. That's what I got when I saw you guys, and then I listened to Sweet Proximity. I was like, these guys must like Verlaine and Lloyd. They have
Oh
to.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's why I was so excited about getting Jim into the band because he sent us a demo of you sent us a demo of some of your stuff, and I definitely heard some television vibes in there, and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what we need. Um, and when we started this band, I decided to make the pronouncement that there will be no strumming free band because we wanted all to be like spiky, leads going on and stuff like that. Um, so for Sweet Proximity, I'd written that song initially as like an acoustic song, believe it or not, with open tuning.
Wow.
Yeah. So it had this almost sort of Indian vibe to it. Um, and I never did anything with it because it just never seemed to fit with any of the bands I was, playing with. And this was a while ago that I did
How
that.
old is that song?
That song was probably from like 2000 as a vibey thing like that. That was probably like 2015 or something like that. Um, but then I just shelved that. It's just it's on one of the cassette recordings I have from years ago, and I just never did anything with it. But um, then I came up with these lyrics that I thought were pretty cool. Oh, sorry, the lyrics were part of the original one. So the lyrics with the three different characters in the song and stuff like that. Those were from that original thing, but the song did not rock at all. Um, and then I rewrote it during the pandemic as a pop song. So the very ending of the song it goes, "Oh, sweet proximity." That was like the hook of the song, and it was more like a strummy pop song.
Right, right.
And then I showed it to these guys, and we went through it, and it was a strummy pop song. And then um, Jay turned to me, and goes, "Is this really what you want to do?" And it made me think about it and realize that it's not what I wanted to do. So I took a week and completely like just threw out all the chords, made it like a one chord verse. With just a really aggressive guitar riff. And then when we started playing it, I just told Jim to, go Robert Quine out on it and just completely make it as aggressive and crazy as possible. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I could do that." And
So,
that's how we ended up with that.
yeah, I really like it. So would you say that the most influential thing about what you guys are doing would come from that like mid 70s, late 70s New York
Yeah,
vibe?
I
early.
can
Yeah,
definitely buy into that for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love that whole scene back then, with Patti Smith and all the bands that
yeah,
the CBGB scene. But no, you mentioned Richard Hell, Jim. Not very many people ever mention Richard Hell. And when him and Verlaine got there, they started the whole thing from
yeah.
what I understand about. I'm sure David knows the whole story, being a journalist. But
Well, yeah, Richard Hell couldn't really play bass or didn't really want to. That
it,
was that was the problem there, and so he just didn't fit in.
Yeah, he was in every band that started, but he never seemed to finish anything. I think drugs had
Yeah,
more to do.
Yeah, there's a great book. I'm sure both of you have read it. Please Kill Me by Legs
Yeah.
McNeil, which is just a series of interviews with all of these people.
yeah,
Fascinating. I guess they were Verlaine and Lord, like two prep school kids or something, and they ran away to New York. I mean,
yeah.
From
crazy.
Kentucky or
Or
someplace.
wherever, like just great stories, and must have been a very exciting time to have been there.
I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to talk about television because, obviously Marquee Moon is one of the greatest records ever. And
Yep.
I don't know, I don't think they ever get enough credit for
No.
what they did. The other track of the two singles, Boil in the Ocean, what's the story behind this track? Because I couldn't really try to figure out what's going on there. Could you tell me what you were thinking, David, when you wrote it?
Well, boil in the ocean is a business term that means just do whatever you have to do to get the result you want. It's like do the most extreme thing. Um, and so I don't know, I just liked the way it sounded, and it was just running through my head when I was, walking to Dunkin' Donuts one morning, and I just came up with that chorus. And then for the verse, it just, I just kind of filed the thing away, didn't really think about it for a while. And then um, there's this like Indian temple behind where I teach music. It's in Lowell, and they do this drum thing every now and then. It's really cool. It's really percussive. Really like 20 drummers, going at it at once. And I heard that, I thought, wow, that'd be really cool to do something with that. So I recorded it, and then I brought it home and I was messing around with it. Um, and I actually made my own recording of it using Addictive Drums. It's a drum program, but I didn't know how to make the program swing, so it was really stiff, and I thought, okay, that's cool, maybe that's what I'm looking for. And then I recorded it twice by accident. And when I was playing it back to listen to it, the two recordings were offset by about a half second, and it swung. And it was like, hey, this swings. And I realized it kind of sounded like, Adam and the Ants kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
or what was that? What was that other band that had that song cassette?
Oh, Bow Wow Wow.
Bow Wow Wow, yeah. So and so, uh, I kind of took that, and I showed that to Pat, and I said, "Can you do this?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that." And so we just, I came up with the verse, um, and then we just all got together and made it into what it is, which is what we tend to do. We arrange things as a band.
And Benny did these too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We went into the studio with those two pretty recently. When was that? Like February?
Yeah, early February.
Oh,
Yeah.
you really that pushed along pretty quickly. That's the advantage of digital, right? You can hurry up
Right.
and get something out. What about the artwork?
The artwork was just, something that I got on Etsy, and I bought it for like $5. Um, the psychedelic boy in anguish. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and I just sent it to Joanne Kalinowski, who does all of our covers. She just, she's into the band and she likes to work with us. And she put the lettering on there and made it into what it is, and I think it's really cool. So we have the same artwork, but one is red for Sweet Proximity and one is blue for Boiling the Ocean.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
It's our
Totally cool.
symbol.
So what's the plan now for you guys?
We're learning new songs all the time. I'm writing lots of stuff. Some of it is increasingly more political, I would say. Um, Pretty much, it's hard to avoid writing stuff. I think that's political now, and I think that people are in a lot of anguish and people are really hurting. Um, and so it maybe helps people get together a little more. So the song that that we're working on now is called Things to Do When It's Dark. And that's the one that's probably going to get us all thrown in jail. But
Oh,
yeah.
can you elaborate at all on that?
Um, use your imagination,
Yeah, we're in dark times.
Yes, we
What
are.
about gigs, man? You got some gigs coming up?
Yep. I'll let Jim handle
Well,
some.
let's see, it's April. May, we got that show at the Square Root. Friday, May 9th, I believe that is, and with Charming Arson and Answer Man, two superb bands, and a place we really enjoy playing. There's a great communal vibe there, and I think as David was saying earlier, I may be sounding hopelessly naive, but I'd like to think that music remains a force for building community and a method for bringing people together in a positive way. And that place just has that feel to it. It's got a, I don't want to say coffee
Roslindale?
house, but a little
It's
coffee house more so than
yeah.
rock club. Like, I don't know, a blend of the two.
Is that the Roslindale
Yeah, it's in
section of
Roslindale.
Boston?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in Roslindale. It's just got a
Yeah,
great
right
vibe.
next to JP, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right
it's
down the
it's a
street.
part of town I rarely get out to, admittedly.
Yeah.
Like there's not I guess there's other restaurant stuff, obviously, but it's a reason to go out to Roslindale because it's a
I
fun place.
Yeah, and
Nice
there's nothing
folks.
else to do in Rosendale, so everybody goes there.
No, it's generally
It's
well
everyone
attended.
Rossi goes there. It is always a good crowd there, and it's an early show too. Like they start the show at 8 o'clock
And
and
yeah.
finish it by 11. So it works out really well.
Now we're playing O'Brien's in June for the first time. Am I correct? David Tell has not been at O'Brien's before, which is great.
I haven't played there since God, like the 90s.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too, but I always liked the place. And we're opening for a national touring act, Joe Kaplow, who I don't know much about Joe, but I went online to hear his songs. A great songwriter. It's a Sunday, but again, we're playing first, and should be a great show. And then we have another one in June, right, David, with the Ghouls?
Yeah, we have with the Ghouls at the Jungle.
Awesome.
That's going to
They
be.
won the most recent Rumble, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they won the Rumble in
Band.
24. Yeah.
So
nice.
those will all be great fun.
Is that a busy schedule for you guys? Because I get the vibe that you guys don't play a lot of shows.
We try to do like one a month.
One a
Oh,
month.
one a
Yeah.
month. That's
One a
good.
month. And that's between both Lowell and Boston. Like, I mean, there's certainly the danger always of playing out too frequently and asking too much of those who would pay that cover to go see you.
Do you guys live up in Lowell?
I do.
David does.
I'm the only one.
But there's a great scene happening up there.
There really
A
is.
couple places we play quite regularly. And for example, the Warp and Weft, wonderful place, great restaurant, and no cover, which I love because it's just full of people all night long having a great time. And yeah, Lowell seems to be a happy place right now.
And Thirsty too. Thirsty
And the
First.
Thirsty
And that's
First,
where
yeah.
we did the Mini Beast show.
It's really funny because I had been to that place and I didn't realize it because my friend Alvin Long, you guys probably know Alvin.
Oh yeah,
He had an art show there. When I walked in, I was like, I think I've been here before, and it was the same place. You guys in Mini Beast
it
go
was
together well.
it was Uncharted before.
You're right, Uncharted, right?
Yeah.
And I like the vibe with you guys and Mini Beast together. You guys play really good together. It's a good fit.
We did it again at the Jungle back in February.
Yep, we played with them in the Jungle, and they were going to play with us at the Jungle again, but unfortunately they couldn't do the gig. So
that's too bad.
But we got the Ghouls.
They're such a distinctive and unique act, unlike anything else.
Yeah, and Peter's a really nice guy, and he's really into our band. He's willing to play with us, whenever we can get him. So.
He's a fantastic guy, man, for sure, no
really
doubt.
Is.
Before I let you guys go, is there anything you guys are listening to these days that might surprise me or my listeners? Or you guys listen to older stuff? Is there anything new? I mean, what do you listen to records or is it all digital for you, David?
Oh, I don't think I even have a record player. I might have one.
That surprises me about you. It really does.
Oh, wait a minute. There is a record player in the house, yeah. But I just to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of music because I'm also trying to write novels. And that just when I'm at home and I live by myself, so when I'm, in the zone, which is most of the time when I'm by myself, I'm working on the novels. I just finished one called The Rise and Fall of Water, which is a weird book about a blind guy who finds out that he's part of an experiment that's been taking place in his small town for years, and it involves water. So, so we'll see what happens.
Wow.
Provocative. I have to say, Steve, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I have a huge record collection. A huge record collection I'm not saying it continues to grow, but I also have a huge CD collection. And I continue, if I find an unusual piece of music that's not available any other way, I'll still buy a CD or a record. But they are taking up a lot of space. And I guess you begin to wonder, as you said, do you downsize them to a less bulky way of storing them? But albums are heavy.
Yeah,
And
it's a problem for me, man. It's a
yeah,
real
I mean,
problem.
that's kind of where I'm getting to. But because you asked, I do want to say what I find myself doing a lot now. It's going back to my old vinyl of bands that I loved around here, like Big Dipper and the Neighborhoods, and just particularly Big Dipper. I threw on their Heavens record the other day, and just remembering how many great songs, and what a great time that was. So I do find myself digging back in the past and being glad that I've got those records.
Big Dipper. I haven't heard them mentioned in a while. It's a good one,
Oh
man.
yeah, great band, love them, got that first Zulus on vinyl, that Bones cover, that great first EP they put out. So some
It
things,
was on Green World. Yeah, yeah, that's a
is
good
it
one too.
hard? Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's hard to find some of these things on other sources. So yeah, I still got all my old vinyl. I dig back into it all the time.
Cool. Well, hey, it was good talking to you guys, man. I really like
Good
your
talking to you,
band.
Steve.
When
Thanks.
Murata sent the press release out, Paul Michael Murata, who, by the way, is an excellent publicist. I think I
Great
say
guy.
that every time I have one of his bands on here, but you can't give the guy enough credit. He's
No, he's the
really
best. He
Just
works
couldn't
so
agree
hard.
more.
he's really good at what he does. When I heard the new songs, I went back and listened to the other stuff, and I was like, yeah, I got to get these guys on. So thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having us, Steve. It's a real honor to be on this show and to have a chance to talk about our music. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks,
Yeah,
David.
yeah. Also want to say that we're releasing a video now for Boiling the Ocean. Actually, the song hasn't been released yet, but they're already playing it on the radio. We never sent it to them. Um, uh,
Fine by me.
yeah, well, no, it's great,
Well,
but
is the video already up? Because you can rip the, MP3 off the
no, the
video.
video has not been released yet. So, I don't know. I don't know where Sethi Spice got a hold of our
Well,
recording,
there
but
was an advanced press release with
Yeah,
a private link to the video.
oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
well,
So then that's
Michael,
that.
I got it from Michael, so he
Yeah.
probably, if you're on the press list, you'll get
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah,
how
but
I got it.
he probably said, don't release this until after the 15th. But whatever.
Comes
Um,
out
Whoops.
Tuesday.
it's Tuesday. Yeah.
All right, man.
Cats Day.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you
guys.
so
Good
much,
luck.
Steve.
Good luck, man.
Thanks, Steve.
All
Bye.
right.